All right, I want to welcome everybody to this panel discussion on the value of predictive maintenance. I'm Justin Hatfield. I'm the president of HECO out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. I want to welcome all of our panelists that are here with me today. I'll let each one introduce themselves. If you want to start.
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Krishna Yarramasu. I am Relayr's Vice President of Strategy and Transformation, overseeing topics related to the development and execution of our long-term strategy, as well as the transformation efforts that we go through internally and with our customers. Excited to talk with all of you today.
Stephan?
Yeah, hey, hello everyone. My name is Stephan Liozu. I'm pretty much involved a lot in value-based pricing and the pricing of digital solutions. So I'm a value advisor to Relayr. Working very closely with HECO, and I'm happy to be here today.
Jason?
Hi, Jason Spettel. I'm Director of Reliability here at HECO. I've been in the predictive maintenance industry for about 30 years now, doing route-based and then IoT for probably the last 20 years for it.
He was born into vibration analysis, let's just say that. So I'm going to turn it over for a few minutes over to Stephan, who's going to do a short 10-minute, 15-minute presentation to kind of get the thoughts moving. Right now, we'll do that, and then we're going to have a couple polls as well that we'll do throughout this session. And then I'm going to allow everyone to unmute themselves here in a little bit once we get past that, so that we can open it up to questions. If for whatever reason you can't unmute yourself, there is the question and answer button as well as the chat. I'm monitoring both of those on the screen over here, and I'll help to try to facilitate the session. So Stephan, turn it over to you.
Great. Yeah, so the topic of this discussion is really defining, quantifying, extracting the value of IoT and predictive maintenance. And I think it's important that we all consider that the predictive maintenance play is a strategic value play, and we've been working hard at doing this. And along the line of this, we got to do a fantastic job at calculating the value, but also educating customers on the value that predictive maintenance and IoT in general bring to them, right? So, and IoT, as you know, and predictive maintenance is not new. It's been around for 20, 30, 40 years, and and there's a high chance that you already have some initiatives in predictive maintenance. And if you look at these slides from an industrial maintenance report, customers and end users are already doing some kind of preventative or computerized maintenance management program, reactive maintenance or something. So it's very rare that you see a company that is at the basic level of maintenance, just reacting right and left. So it's an important discussion, because at the end of the day, value is going to be changing based on what you compare against, and we'll talk about this in a future slide. But so there's a high level of maturity in general with maintenance strategies, and obviously what we want to help our end users is translating that into numbers, right? What are the financial benefits of doing more advanced maintenance strategies? And there's a little bit of a duality here, because on the left side of this slide, you see that there's still quite a bit of cost associated with unplanned, downtime, and lots of reports out there. The numbers on an average day of downtime cost is anywhere between 300 to 500. Obviously, it's going to be depending on your end use vertical. In oil and gas, it could go up to $8 million a day. And it's very, right now it's pretty high, because at the end of the day, we're all in supply chain restrictions right now. We're all very busy supplying customers, and you cannot lose any minute of production. But on the other side of the spectrum, on the right side of the slide, you could see that most companies are not very good at calculating unplanned downtime and tracking it and translating that into a cost. So generally speaking, they know how to do planned downtime. They know that they have to stop the assets and repair them, and they can associate a cost in the budget. But when we go into unplanned downtime costs, they rely on numbers from outside. They have a rough estimation from finance. So it is still quite a duality that we have to keep in consideration in our mind when we are talking to end user and customers about the value of predictive maintenance, which is the biggest value driver, is the reduction of unplanned downtime. So most of the time they won't be able to give you numbers, and we got to help them calculate the number. So we have a poll just to ask you, if you are able to do so, and Justin, if you could trigger that. There we go. Are you formally tracking unplanned downtime in your business today? Can you come up with a number? And is that number reliable, in other words? Let's see what, oh, I cannot vote, damn it.
Yeah. We're getting people, people are clicking it now. Please click it, you should see it. We got about less than half have done it so far. So we haven't, give you kind of a count to 5.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And pull and share the results here. So
all right.
Pretty big mix.
Yeah, pretty mix. Yeah. But still though, I mean, at the end of the day, it's you look at, in some industries, 2 or 3 days of unplanned downtime can make a difference between making the budget or not making the budget. And I think we highly recommend customers to tracking it in a multifunctional way with maintenance and finance and operations, all working together to come up with a number. And in my experience in manufacturing, the CFO of my divisions, when I was in executive positions, they were on top of that numbers. I knew the cost of unplanned downtime in variance analysis per minute. So going back to the presentation, when you look at the value play for predictive maintenance, is really 3 critical value drivers. Minimizing unplanned downtime, and obviously this one is a big one. And if you read reports out there, and in our experience with HECO and Relayr, it could be up to 50% reduction, which is a very high number when you consider the value of a day of being down. It's a lot of money on the table. The second one is reducing manual monitoring process, including walking around and checking the machines. And apologies for the typo. I just realized there's a typo there. But and automating the work so that you could bring your engineers and their reliability managers doing more productive things and more value-added things. And another one is obviously the control of repair cost. And here we're talking about, for both the second and third driver, about 20 to 30% reduction in cost. And, so you want to be anticipating the repair cost and not wait for the massive failure where you have to really take the assets down. So you're doing ongoing maintenance to continue the operations, to minimize critical failure, and also maybe extend the life cycle of the asset. So, but we could add more drivers. Typically, those are the 3 that we see in discussion with customers. There is also inventory, spare parts optimization. There is also energy cost reduction, optimization of health and environment expenses. But generally speaking, we focus on these 3, and this is where the calculation needs to happen. And that's an example, for example, of the work we're doing with Relayr and HECO on calculating. So you see the 50%, the 80% and 25% reduction. And at the end of the day, customers might be able to give you a number, and user might be able to calculate a number. And most of the time we have to work with them to calculate the actual number. This is kind of the first indication, and then we go into a value discovery process where we'll help them. And, we have to bring the maintenance manager and the, maybe the finance, the cost controller of the plant, to really get to a point where we have a good base for discussion. And that becomes the base for future savings and value realization in predictive maintenance. Bottom line is, value is not going to be the same for customers or for end users that are doing various types of maybe progressive maintenance strategy. So it's going to be very rare to see a company doing nothing, just doing plain maintenance and not doing some type of routine-based preventative maintenance, taking the assets down with planned repair. So that, and this is typically versus the do nothing. This is where you see the full potential of the value play. So depending on whether the end user does, preventative maintenance or routine-based predictive maintenance or IoT, advanced IoT, then the value numbers are going to switch, are going to vary, because at the end of the day, the reference value, what you compare against, will be different. And at the same time, maybe value drivers may be different. For example, if there is an existing IoT solution in place and you're going to replace that solution because the end user is not happy with it, then your power of predictions, the leveraging of the data, the translating of the data into insights, the alert system might be better, right? Maybe the fact that you're agnostic with the type of sensors that you can install might be leading to different results. So bottom line is, it's not one plain vanilla value number. You really have to understand what the end user is doing currently, and work with them doing a deep value analysis with them through a questionnaire, through a discovery process that may take a little bit of time, but it's worth, as you do the site survey, for example, for a pilot, you at the same time you'll do some basic calculation to have a number, a baseline number, right? So you really go in the value management process. You go from doing the value discovery process with the customer, then calculating with them, the example of value pool, what we call value pool that we showed before with Apollo, and come up with the calculations that will fit their situations versus the reference value, right? And then at the end of the day, it's an exchange between value and price. We're going to give them a lion's share of the value, but we're going to, obviously capture some because there is a lot of technology behind it and a lot of differentiators. But most of the time, that value is more concrete. And then when you get into deployment, you get into pilot project and control deployments, and then scaling of the projects, you track the realized value. You can show the end user and everybody work in teams through value audit or QBR, quarterly business review meetings, and then you show the value and you show that, hey, we prevented this failure. We give you so many alerts, and you were able to optimize your team design, your schedule. So this is what is also very important, because as you scale your predictive maintenance programs, you want to track the value along the way and calculate the ROI for top management and then for future investments. So it's really all about preparing good ROI analysis, strong business cases, and then track the value over time. At the same time, you really have to understand that, not every predictive maintenance solution is created equal, and asking the right question to your vendor, about domain expertise, about what type of, platform they use, what type of, sensors they use, and then discussing what the power of AI analytics, because this is, a critical differentiator, how they train the system, how, what kind of data goes in, what kind of, KPIs they track, and that's essential. In Apollo, there is also an insurance program, which also provides an additional peace of mind, right? Because you're really, if the event is undetected, then you have the protection of the Relayr Munich Re force behind it. And then it's, not only you get the predictive maintenance peace of mind, but you get the insurability peace of mind, which is a kind of a double impact. And then something that right now we have no other choice is to deploy very quickly. I know Justin's team is, going full force in the market and installing and deploying in a matter of, a few weeks, a couple months. But then you have the data, a week or 10 days later, you start seeing the data flowing into your platform, and it's phenomenal. We're not talking about 6 months of time. We're talking about when, obviously you're ready and the assets are being surveyed and we have all the work done, a matter of a few weeks to get in operation. So ask the right questions, compare the programs and the solutions, apples to apples, And then, this is kind of the heart of differentiation, is the heart of value. And the value comes from these 5 differentiators that Relayr and HECO as a team, offer to the market. So that was my short presentation. Justin, I know you have maybe another poll here.
Yes. So this one's a little more focused around specifically IoT, because that is somewhat the theme of this is, yeah, we're talking about predictive maintenance in general, but we're really talking a lot about IoT, and I think a lot of the conversations are going to lead to that. So I'll go ahead and launch this poll here. And if your company has made specific investments in IoT, and there's a few options here of, yes, we've made specific investments, we've trialed things, we've done things, but we're moving forward, essentially is what that's saying. And then there's, yes, well, we're kind of trialing some things here and there, but we haven't found the correct solution. And then no, hey, we see the value. It seems like something I want to have and our plant could get value from, but what do I choose? There's 1,000 options out there for IoT. What will actually bring my plant? What's the best option for my plant?
Yeah.
And hey, I don't see the value in it.
Yeah.
And what that is. So I'll give it a couple seconds here.
As we vote, I think it's important that's a big difference between IoT providers. At the end of the day, it's not a technology play, no longer. Maybe at the beginning, it's a value play, and and HECO and Relayr will work with you at calculating that value, and then you look good internally because you can deliver the ROI you promised. So
I think that's a great discussion to have, Stephan. Really what we're kind of proposing here, and what you've done and Relayr's done, is saying it's really taking the technology and putting it second. Where it seems like in the IoT space, it's all technology, this sensor, this gateway, this, but none of that matters if it doesn't bring value, or reduce that unplanned downtime or something like that for the plant.
Yeah.
So and obviously, sorry.
No, just to add into this, I'd be curious to hear from the folks who have made investments in specific IoT technology and really understand from them whether or not they've seen the value from those investments. Yeah. Because a story that we've seen a number of times at Relayr is people will make investments in IoT, they'll have the dashboards, they'll have the insights in front of them, but those insights won't always translate into action and actually driving value. So that's something where, part of what differentiates Apollo and the work that we're doing together is our desire and our ability to meet customers where they are, and really try to make sure that it's not just about the dashboards and insights you're going to get. It's really about making sure that actually generates value and leads to things like lower maintenance costs, lower unplanned downtime.
Yeah, and it looks like we have a nice group of people here, some that have made specific investments. Nobody that's really still trialing to find, but some that are, hey, we see the value, but we haven't really chosen an option yet. And it looks like we got somebody here that maybe is here because, hey, prove it to me, show me the value. I'm trying to figure out the value here, so show it to me. So good results there as well.
Yeah, and if you don't know the value, I've seen a few responses. We don't know the value yet. We can certainly share with you some of the reports that are written by the experts, which are less anecdotal and more research based, and there is definitely value. And these are reports that you can trust. Now, obviously, every number is going to be different, right, Justin? But and we know that, and this is why you can't escape the deep discovery, discussion together. It's a kind of a value play. It's cooperative and collaborative.
Yeah, and the fact that the technology is there, right? The technology is there, it exists. So focus on that value first. See if it makes sense for your plant. But there's also something I want to bring Jason in here, because predictive maintenance is not simply just IoT. As we said in the beginning of this, Jason's been in the predictive maintenance space for 30 years. We say it's been around for that long. So maybe there's a look here of is there value in predictive maintenance first? And then is there value in IoT-backed predictive maintenance as a second approach? Jason, can you talk a little bit about the value of predictive maintenance and some of the things that you've been doing for 30 plus years?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on. when you talk about predictive, there's not one tool that fits everything. You got to think of it and take the approach of what is the right technology, right process for the assets you're looking at. You know, you have common spares. Putting IoT on it might still be okay, but is that really the best value for it? You've always got everybody, you know, talk about doing criticality analysis at your plant. That's the biggest portion to understand what is really what we have to be focused on. You have stuff in your plant that's going to be run to failure. Probably doing just preventive maintenance on it is the best thing for it. But getting into those, I like to call them those non-critical, you know, you might have spares. Doing a route-based is where that could come in handy. Just because they're spares, you don't want them to fail anyways, but bringing something that's a monthly or quarterly route can go out. Then you start getting into, I always like to bring them down to, you have your low critical and your high critical. You've got those high critical stuff. They're like, this shuts down, the entire plant is down. That's where we really start talking about the IoT space becomes really big. And then we get those low critical are, you know, maybe it reduces production, but doesn't take the whole plant down. But those are still ones that you don't want to, they have huge value to your plant. And then my biggest talk on it is, you know, don't just throw preventive at everything. That actually can be very costly. Getting a hybrid approach, merging your preventive and your predictive should be working together, helping to extend your preventive maintenance time periods. Instead of 6 months, maybe you go to 9 months, you know, a year. That's the time and effort, and vice versa. If you get information from your preventive, hey, we took the coupling apart and we noticed significant wear going to it. Yes, it was still running, but we had it. Maybe we need to change our predictive frequency on it. So,
and I think there's a lot of value in doing this with something that has a guarantee tied to it, because, you know, if you back that PM cycle, so say you fix this machine, do something to a machine every 3 months or every 6 weeks, whatever, and you back that off because you haven't had issues. Well, have you not had issues because you're maintaining it at the correct interval, or have you not having issues because you're over maintaining that piece of equipment? So having a system that has a guarantee behind it that says, hey, you know, we're gonna back off this interval, but if the sensor or the solution doesn't do its job, then you're protected, and tremendous value in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looks like we do have a first question from the group here, and it's from Kevin, saying, in the industrial space, there is still a reluctance to connect equipment. How do you see smaller data sets or synthetic data playing a role to speed scale?
Well, I think I'll get started by saying that, you know, obviously you do need to connect the assets, and we're not talking, you know, because of the evolution of IoT, you know, you could get installation done very quickly. I mean, it's no longer, you know, now you need to have access to the assets. You need to understand which assets you're gonna connect, but and obviously you need to have the permission and the collaboration from the end user at the plant level. Once you have all that stuff, it's a very easy installation. You know, the sensors, you know, have evolved to the point where we're not talking weeks and months. We're talking days to get the plant fully installed, right? Justin, usually. So, and then you really have to think of, in terms of what Jason was saying, how many critical assets are we gonna, you know, put the connections on, the connectors on, the sensors on, so that we have a good representation of the, you know, and a good protection, I would say, of the plant, right? We obviously recommend, you know, if you do a control deployment, you have to have enough assets connected to start seeing the value and the impact in the plant. So 20, 30, 40, you know, assets connected. If you go under like 10, you know, it's how much that, you know, is that going to represent in your overall asset pool? It may be not enough, but I know we look at sometimes a steel plant or, you know, a cement plant may have thousands of, you know, potential points of connection. And if you're serious about this, then you have enough data flowing into the AI platform to really give you the insights that you need. So you do need data points. You do need to have the predictive power of your platform.
If I can add to this, you know, I think Stephan is spot on when he says data is really the lifeblood of this. And for folks who are familiar with data science and have been in that space, you know that machine learning type algorithms are only as good as the data you feed into them. And what I would say is that the benefit of a program like this is that you can start to get those insights very, very early on, because it's not just the data that we're getting from that one asset, it's the data that we're getting from the collected field of assets applied across a variety of different use cases, being put in a variety of different environments. The program will deliver the insights and the value that's being generated from that wealth of experience much further beyond than it might just have on one location. I
think that's a good point. Is there's an approach to this of there's really a different approach. There's an approach in especially the IoT of selling equipment. And the play on that is technology. It's equipment. It's let's get it connected. And then there is this play that's value. But what matters about the value is that we can truly look at the information behind that unit that we're monitoring. It's not just about the sensor monitoring vibration. There's a lot more data that should be gathered, right? I mean, we call it metadata, right? So all that metadata is that you can relate this piece of equipment to 3 or 4 other pieces of equipment that, well, more than that, 300 or 400 more pieces of equipment that are out there in the field. And you can start to see, are there similarities? And that AI algorithm gets smarter and smarter and smarter the more data it ingests. It's funny because it's the same exact approach that's been taken in route-based for so many years. Jason, you guys go look at similar units all the time, right? That's your approach.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to view something. Hey, I've got 15 pumps in the plant that are all the same size, all the same horsepower motor. It's, that information helps you identify. You can start looking across and saying, I've got one that's running at 0.1 inches per second peak, but this other one's running at 0.5, but most of them run at 0.2. What's the outlier? And then starting to look around, what's the difference? That data coming in on similar equipment, even though it may not even be at your plant, it may be from other plants. That's where the AI has that possibility to integrate all that data from all the sites that are monitored to be able to come in and say, I'm smarter. I now have seen it, not just at what your plant is. You may be running a fantastic plant. Your equipment may be in great condition. That's great information for this next plant to be able to say, well, wait a second, we thought we were running good. Wait a second, we're double, triple the vibration level. Why? And you've taken that and said, that's acceptable. Well, maybe it's not really acceptable. You now get to have the insight, not from just your plant.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me put that in context also, because if I may, Justin, some industries are really struggling in hiring reliability specialist technicians and engineers. For example, the oil and gas is in desperate need of engineers, and as more and more technical people retire, they have to replace them, and this is where the technology can really help. And when you spend a lot of time training, so if you get started today and you have enough assets with data flowing in the system, and you use these people who may be on the way out to train the algorithm, I think you could really keep your plants running without having to wait for hiring, which is right now very concrete. Some industries are struggling, and that impacts their schedules. They're running right and left. There is safety issues because they're so busy and stressed. So besides the typical type of value drivers, I think there is also that component. And if you're in a business today that that there is going to be a wave of retirement, it's now or never to install sensors and to have the right technology, because then you can capture these people, can help you make sense out of all the data.
Yeah, and then I mean, Krishna said it, you've said it. The data is such an important piece here, and I go back to even there's a stat from IHS Markit that's, I think it's around like 60% of companies have tried an IoT program of some kind, and over half of those have failed. And I would bet that stat goes almost similar to a lot of PdM history programs. If you don't do something, I'm talking route-based historical, that's been done for 30 plus years, which is still active and done today. We still do it every single day. Jason's team's out there, every single day doing that. but we've seen ourselves when we're administering a PdM program and it doesn't go well. I think of a manufacturer where we were told to come in and do every single piece of rotating equipment in the plant every single month. And you know what happened? They did nothing with the data. we report, hey, this machine has an issue, this machine has an issue, and it was information overload. And I see the same thing happening in the IoT space, where we were talking about it a little bit ago. Battery alert, battery alert, battery alert. And I think that people hear those stories and it's reluctance to want to get into this, because I'm just trading issues then. I go from just having machine issues now having machine and sensor issues. So how does a company, an end user of equipment, get around that? I guess from just having to deal with sensors and equipment all the time.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to go into what we can call information overload, right? You know, you will get a lot of, once you start on a program like this, you will start to surface all kinds of data, all kinds of alerts, all kinds of information that you weren't having before. But at the end of the day, what really matters is the outcome that you're trying to achieve, the insight that is helping you get to that outcome, and the actions that you're taking against it. So really fundamentally, it's extremely important for us to work with you to figure out, what does your daily workflow look like? Where is the best point for you to actually receive this information? And how can you best translate that information to actual action? Because without that, there's actually no value in IoT. And, you know, I work at an IoT company, but I'll be the first one to tell you that, you know, IoT was a new term 7 years ago, before it was called M2M. There will be a different buzzword in 3 to 4 years, I'm sure of it. But what really matters is all the things that we're talking about here, about the data and the insights that's generating.
Yeah, the issue in that situation was truly a value issue. It was taking it and doing it everywhere. And the same thing happens with the sensors, and you apply it to everywhere. And if you're not going to do something with that data, you probably aren't receiving value for the work that's being done.
Well, so, you know, you have a lot of dramatic statistics about the rate of failure of predictive maintenance and IoT, you know, projects from Cisco and IBM and McKinsey. And then usually, you're right, Justin, it's probably around the 70 to 75% of projects fail. Now, what do you call failure obviously matters. So, you know, a lot of the time, the pilot projects will fail because, first of all, you know, they didn't do a lot of homework. Maybe the clients that were considered for the pilot were not the right clients. Maybe we forced them, quote unquote, to do a pilot, or we gave them away the technology for free to try it. But most of the time, failure in that case is defined as not reaching the objectives. And not reaching the objective is cost reduction and ROI. And because it's not very clear, and it's not very clear because it wasn't defined upfront clearly with the customer. So when the customer looks at, show me the money, show me the realized value, you know, we're like, oh yeah, maybe this and that. And then you're stuck in pilot mode. Well, let's extend the pilot 6 more months, or maybe put another 10 assets. And that incremental drip approach, for me, it's not sustainable. You do the best work upfront collaboratively to decide what the value is. You have an agreement on that value play. You track the value over time, and then you scale super fast. Because if you don't scale super fast, then the value is too small. I mean, you've got 30 assets, 40 assets, maybe out of 1,000 that you could leverage, you know, data from. It's too small for top management to pay attention, or even in the ranking of CapEx investment. So you go from a successful, well-defined control deployment with the right customer to immediately 500, 1,000 assets, and now the value is a tsunami potentially of numbers coming in, of savings.
Let's talk about that transition, especially that transition. We've encountered this a lot with clients where they have a very successful route-based IoT program. How do they justify starting to make that switch to, you know, they're interested in IoT, but things are going good. They don't have a lot of unplanned downtime. They seem to be catching their issues ahead of time, and they're doing, you know, monthly readings. How do they justify that change to say, you know, I like this stuff. I love that I'm not going to have a person go and gather that data all the time. How do I justify that change if I don't have the downtime?
Yeah, so it's a different value analysis for sure. And, you know, you don't know what you don't know. you're in a stable mode, you everything is under control, but maybe things are happening that you think it's normal, but maybe it's not normal, or it's not stable, or so you have to do the right analysis and use the right value drivers. And maybe in that case, it may not be the unplanned downtime that's so dramatic. Maybe it's from month to month, something could happen, right? Or maybe there's a cost of repair that you shouldn't be doing. Or maybe it's a frequency of the repair that you have to do. Maybe you don't do routine visits every month, you do it every quarter. So all that stuff adds up, especially when if you have multi-plants, we have a lot of critical assets. But it's a different value play versus you're not doing routine-based maintenance.
Yeah, Jason, why don't you chip in a little bit about the amount of data difference in typical IoT systems versus, I mean, you're the PdM guy here, versus that traditional route-based. How much more data are you getting?
Obviously, it always varies on the system you are implementing, but I mean, typical systems are looking at least 3 to 4 readings per day, on up to every hour, every 15 minutes. So start thinking about if you just do 4 readings a day, and start saying, okay, we're going to get how many in a week? You start talking like route based. You go out there monthly, you're going to get on a 4 bearing asset. So a motor with 2 bearings and a pump with their 2 bearings. We're going to get like 12 readings every month. We're going to be talking in like the 1800s plus, depending on their frequency that you're going to get every month. So that's where you start talking about getting that granular level of, can we actually identify things at an early stage instead of just, hey, we came in a month later. It was good last month. We came in this month and we've had a significant change. When did that happen? With that data, now you can actually start tracking back to, was there a process change? Was there something done? That's those daily readings, and be able to then track back and say, hey, can we go back and say, yes, we had this happen, or there was a water break, and the line, we dripped, we're flooding water over the top of this, and we may have, that point in time was the point that water got inside the bearing. That's our point of failure. But monthly, you have no idea. It was good last month, it's bad now. When did that happen? So like I said, 1,800 readings, in a month, times that by 12. I mean, you start talking, in plants, you're starting millions of data points per year, instead of hey, we got 1,800 data points from a normal route based. So that's the power. When we start talking about that data flow coming in, it just becomes so powerful.
And if you look at that data, that cost per data point, which is one of those value points that Stephan mentioned, it's significantly less than driving out, having a person collect that data. You're getting a lot more value out of the individual, a better price point per data point when you're using IoT, for sure.
Well, especially if you have to drive long hours to get to the asset, and the access to the asset is hard. And for me, I look at the always safety risks, and frankly, right now there is obviously financial value, but more and more companies are talking about carbon footprint, optimizing production and emission, and all that stuff is coming, my friends. And and IoT will be and predictive maintenance will be critical in achieving some of the numbers on the environmental side, but also on health and human safety, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Jason.
I was just saying, and the other is, right now, it's an analyst comes by at that point in time during that day, the system being on. Multiple times we get calls. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when the system had issues. We show up at 7 o'clock in the morning and there's nothing going on. So being able to get that, you have that chance to collect that data, or that intermittent event that happens that you never catch as an analyst when we show up on our Wednesday every month, after you start up from your shutdown and we get our readings. You get those chances to catch those things that you never knew were going on. It's amazing. You get so routine. We show up at a place at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, but what's that machine look like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a hot July day? It was 70 degrees in the morning. It's now 100 degrees. That's that other part of catching at different points in time to say, does my machine is it the same all the way throughout the day, or do we see changes as ambient temperature changes? Getting that port, and obviously definitely saving on the drive time is a huge point.
Let's talk about the evolution of these IoT-based programs. I think anybody that's trialed it has seen sensor issues, sensor connectivity issues, and things like that. I don't really want to dig too much into the sensors themselves, but it seems like every year, every 6 months, there's another sensor out. It's new technology, better battery life. And something I've always seen end users have a concern with of betting the farm on a solution, and then that solution is obsolete. Because sometimes these can be quick returns, right, Stephan? But they can also be, it might take a little time over a period of time, especially if you're doing it on a smaller scale, right? So how do you recommend end users overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on the first part of that, in IoT, I think it's often overlooked. What is this, a T that we're talking about? It's things, right? And one of the things that I think people tend to underestimate with IoT type programs is exactly what you just said, which is these things exist and operate in all sorts of environments out there. So part of the learnings that we are embedding into this program is effectively, how do you account for the different types of environment that these machines and assets operate in? How do you account for all of this so that things can actually make more sense? And there's ways that you can solve it through configuration. There's ways that we can solve it through just examining the site and understanding what's there. And there's ways that you can solve it through software as well. So there's a variety of different ways that you can actually solve this element. What's really important for us, though, is really starting to get towards that value. And Justin, you asked about journey. What does that look like? For us, and from my perspective, there's a few kind of what I like to call these holy grails that are a part of this journey. One of those holy grails is, for instance, understanding root cause. So understanding what is the condition, not just the condition of that machine, but if that condition starts to go to orange or red, why is it going to orange and red? So the technician that's going out to that location is better equipped to deal with that on the first visit than rather than having to do multiple visits. And if you take that even one step further, one of the industry's kind of holy grails is considered to be remaining useful life. So at what point do you look at an asset and go, it's actually just time to replace this asset or this motor, versus trying to keep on maintaining it and incurring those higher costs. So all of these things are extremely important parts of that IoT journey.
Do you think it's important for clients to understand, because I do, right? So I'm just kind of asking that there's generally not a one sensor fits all, for an industrial facility. I mean, Jason, you're out there every single day in these plants. I think you've learned that pretty quickly, and being able to adapt different sensors and different technologies and different measurements that you can get for a different piece of equipment seems to be extremely important if you truly want to get value out of that program.
Yeah, I mean, it gets down to just understanding the equipment and what you need to be monitoring to be able to tell if there's any kind of failure coming up. I mean, I've still not seen one sensor that can cover everything from 0 hertz out to 2,000 plus hertz. You have to sacrifice on each one. So understanding, I've also not found one sensor that can survive, from minus 40 degrees up to 300, 400 degrees. So you've got to be able to look at it and have a system that it's adaptable to the assets you actually want to monitor, and say, am I selecting the right sensor to be able to do this? And as Justin said, it seems like every day I'm getting emails for, hey, look at our new sensor. We've added this. I mean, years ago, it was we had a sensor that did vibration, single axis, and that's what you got up. Then it was biaxial. Now it's triaxial. Then it was, hey, we got temperature. Now we're starting to see, ultrasound readings. We're seeing flux readings. I mean, you start naming it, there's more and more coming along. So having a system that lets you adapt and you're not pinned into, I bought my system and I've got to pay for it for the next 3 years, and all I'm going to be able to get is vibration and temperature. Doesn't matter if there's a new sensor out there. That's all I can get. So having a knowledge and saying, if a new sensor comes along, can we adapt it to the system and can it be in, or do you have to start from square one all over again? And that's where we've said, I think that when you start talking about failures, of a program, that's where a lot of it happens, where you are pinned into, this is all I have, and that's all I'm going to have while I pay this whole unit off. So the flexibility to a change to your environment and to the industrial environment, and what you're monitoring or being able to monitor, and having that flexibility is huge nowadays.
Back to the point earlier, it's truly not the sensor, it's about the data that the sensor is getting and the value you can realize from that data.
Well, in the system, IoT is a system, is not one sensor, and so you got to think of it as a system. But like Jason is saying, there's parts that will evolve over time. But in some industry, the manufacturing process, is modernized very often. In other industries, you do steel the same way you did steel, 100 years ago, and so you should be able to have a model that explains maybe 98% of your, your variances or your issues. Maybe adding a couple data points additionally is not going to bring that great incremental value. So it's going to depend by vertical. But I would not unbundle the system. It's a system which has a sensor, which has the gateway, which has the data, which has the platform, the insurability, and then obviously the service around it. That whole system brings the value, not one component of the system.
Agreed. And I always like to use the analogy with sensors of phones. So, you have all of us have our smartphones, right? And they're on your desk, in your pocket, whatever. And if you're betting the farm on a sensor, who's BlackBerry and who's Apple? So I mean, so is there going to be support for a sensor that you're choosing now versus looking at a system approach that Stephan just mentioned, and having a complete system that's going to help you and finds the correct solution? I believe that is a significantly more valuable approach for industrial facilities than simply, hey, this sensor can go everywhere.
Yeah, but bottom line is, it's like any investment, any technology investment. You're going to get a lot of value in 2-3 years, and if you do your homework, as we discussed, and you pick the right solution, and then you're going to maybe upgrade it to something else, but it will be paid for, and you will have seen the proof of value, and you would have seen that it's working. Maybe a new system comes in, like you would replace a motor eventually, you would replace a production line, upgrade it. It's the same with IoT. It's not designed to last 28 years. It's designed to be upgrading as everything moves, and technology evolves every, cycles of 2, 3, 4 years. And the key again is back. Can you get your ROI and your payback in 6 months? And then you got 2.5 years of pure value, right? Which will pay for the next generation.
We have a good question here from Scott. That's in the chat, and I'll just read it, and then I'd love to hear from our panelists on their thoughts. And I'm going to go in reverse because it relates to the conversation we're having right now. But isn't that a primary concern going in that we have a system that is flexible and adaptable that will accommodate changes to sensor technology and be able to incorporate new sensor development? But how do we protect ourselves to ensure this can be achieved?
Yeah, first and foremost, we try not to make the problem of picking the right sensor your problem, right? That's part of our program, and our understanding is trying to help make sure that we're selecting the right things that are getting to the right types of data. And we talked a little bit about obsolescence in the past. The data and the types of data that you collect, I mean, vibration analysis around motors has been around for decades also. That is not becoming obsolete. The ways that you get that data, the various types of sensors that are in play, those do evolve much more frequently, as Stephan was alluding to, right? So I have not seen, for instance, a sensor personally that's been rated to last more than 5 or 7 years, and fewer that have actually gone out and achieved it. Whereas you have industrial motors which have been sitting around in the field for sometimes 3 decades.
I think it's a kind of, that's a great question to ask your solution provider you're talking to. Of what are your plans around that? I know for us, we factor that in. We look at it as, we acknowledge and are proud that sensors are going to be replaced over time, that there's going to be better technology, hopefully the cost reduction over time as sensors become more and more mass produced. And that, I think if you're talking to someone who's selling hardware, I think it's extremely hard for them to justify that, because they're going to turn around and want to sell you more hardware in a few years. Or maybe somebody that sells it as a service of saying that, hey, we're going to provide you a remote predictive maintenance service, or with a remote option, remote component of it. Maybe not I mean, if your whole PdM program is remote, you might be going a little too far. You might want to still have, as Jason said, some run to failure assets, some preventive maintenance assets, some route-based predictive maintenance assets, as well as some assets that can justify remote monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if doing that across the board, as we've said, I think multiple times, this is probably not the best choice. There is a scaling approach here where you can see more value as you scale. But you know, so selling it as a service of, we're providing you a remote monitoring service, a predictive maintenance, cloud-based predictive maintenance service, is very different from hardware sales, right?
Well, so yeah, I would say, you know, like you take a company like HECO, they have, you know, they're solution sellers, and they'll help you design the best maintenance strategy for your plant. So it's not a one and zero, black or white, you know, and sometimes IoT or predictive maintenance is not the right solution. So, but this is why, for me, the difference is buying OEM equipment with a sensor versus buying from an expert like, you know, Jason and Justin, that could tell you, hey, this is the best sensor, this is the best platform that will last you 5 years. You know, we're going to scale like crazy. And so you have more flexibility than buying something that's already mounted, or, you know, and you don't know if it's going to be evolving because it's already in place.
Yeah, I'm going to go back. We only have a few more minutes left, so I'm going to go back to Scott's previous comment here. I believe one of the benefits of IoT data collection is the ability of utilizing cloud-based aggregated data analysis and alarming. This relieves the demand for having a technical specialist bear the mantle of data analysis of megabytes of data. I think that's a great point. Yeah. And Jason, you know, you guys out there doing route-based, how much of the data you actually collect is useful? I mean, it might be useful down the road, but at that moment in time, what would you say, what percentage of the assets are running good?
Probably 70 to 80% when we go to a plant are no change for the last 10 months, you know, so I mean, no significant change that you're looking at. So yeah, you are basically collecting it. Yes, it gives you that trend history to be able to say it, but yeah, I mean, that's a part of going through. And, you know, imagine at a plant that you've got 1,500 assets, you know, go out and collecting that data and having to sift through all of it, having that, you know, cloud-based analysis to be able to help highlight and say, this is what you really got to spend your time on. So now you really spend your time in the day looking at it and then going out and taking actionable items on that data that's now the valuable. That's the part. Getting that to actionable items faster is a huge part. You've collected the data, but okay, data is great, but if you can't do anything with it, then it's kind of like it's just sitting there. But yeah, having that is the big portion.
And to what Stephan said earlier about the difficulty in finding reliability engineers and people to go out and do this, there's a staff availability value here, right? I mean, if you can find, if you have open positions in your company, which I think about 100% of companies out there have right now, you know, if you could take those resources and focus them more on problems and solving problems versus collecting that data that is good, right? That there is an action you need to take right now. You know, you utilize IoT solutions to augment that, you know, help that bring value to, I mean, that's not even a value pool that we've talked about, but I think it's there, it exists, right? So. Well,
especially in oil and gas, for example, you know, that's you know, a cry for help from, you know, all these engineers retiring. I think overall IoT is going to be a fantastic opportunity in the future, and predictive maintenance is going to evolve. We're going to see better connectivity, better cybersecurity. We're going to see better analytics, faster analytics. So it's phenomenal. The future is bright for the world as far as, but the proof is in the pudding, you know, and you look at the consulting reports that promise trillions and trillions. It's great, it's promising, but we have to do the homework, the value homework. And this was the topic of this presentation, really going deep in value, customer by customer, and showing the value.
Yeah, we only have a few minutes left. I want to go more to like a little more of a tactical approach. Maybe we've piqued someone's interest here on, oh man, I think that's where we can get value out of a IoT backed or even a predictive maintenance program of any kind. What approach do you suggest they take? We talked about it a little earlier. I feel that it's good maybe to reinforce that of how can they start this journey? How can they kick this off?
Well, generally speaking, unless your company is far away and totally disconnected, there is going to be a digital transformation initiative in your organization. Someone is going to be talking to you or doing some program, or even someone in your plant that wants to go to the next generation of strategy. So it's having a good discussion internally. How can we improve and not be satisfied with the status quo? And frankly, management always asks for, hey, can you save me some money? Right? Because right now I can't get the spare parts, I can't get the recruitments done. Can you do better? And the can we do better? Then it's like, okay, what are the solutions out there? You have to, do your homework a little bit, search what's available in your space, in your vertical, in your industry. And back to what Justin was saying, there's multiple players out there, but you got to look at the differentiators that are listed in that slide, and I'm sure the slides can be available to you. But and then it's immediately for me is looking at value. Getting internally, a true understanding of the cost. That what is this costing us with all the value drivers that we discussed. And how can I capture a share of this? Because when you're talking 50% reduction in unplanned downtime and you have a problem, it's huge.
I think it's important to focus on that value first, too, right? It seems that all of these discussions focus technical, sensor ranges, things. So first focus on value. Is there value that can be brought from us? Do the study. We'll help you do a study. That's what we're here for. We'll come in and help you, ask you the right questions. Every company is unique. We have minds like Stephan and Krishna and Jason and these guys that can get together and really have a ton of experience doing this. So we'll come and help you do that study, say, where can you provide value? Is it downtime? Is it staff availability? Is it where can this create value for you, or where doesn't it create value? It may not be a smart solution for your plant, and it's good to figure that out before you selected the sensor, figured out where you're mounting it, where you're mounting the gateway, how to deal with your IT department if you have to get, I mean, there's a lot to the technical, and it seems that these conversations get drowned out with the technical, and all of the value gets lost.
Yeah.
And including designing the right pilot project, because the way you design the project could be make or fail, I guess.
Yeah. And we've done a lot of talking in this conversation, but I will say this process doesn't start with talking; it starts with listening, and it starts with the discovery and understanding your unique situation, what types of motors and assets you have, how are they being used, how do you currently maintain them. All of these things are part of what we try to surface through discovery. Justin, let me turn a question back to you. If folks are interested in Apollo and starting with Apollo, where do they go to get started?
From Apollo, reaching out to me. Everyone should have my email from the invitation for this. Reach out to Jason. There's also an Apollo page on our website that you can easily access. There's a form there that can be filled out, and reach out to us. Call HECO's main number. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of us, and we'll come to try to figure out how it can make sense for you to get started. And Apollo is our remote predictive maintenance service, but we'll design a predictive maintenance program that fits your plant. If that's a combination of route and remote, if that's a combination of preventive maintenance and predictive maintenance, we will help you design. We're not experts at your plant. It's gonna be a lot of questions from us to you, and you giving us the information so we can help you design it. It's a two-way street, though. It's a partnership that we build with our clients. It can't simply be a vendor solution, because we're really integrating ourselves with your plant in order to come up with the best solution. And it's going to tweak and it's going to change over time. What we do today is not always the best solution tomorrow. We've talked about that a lot, right? And we're going to adjust that moving forward. We're at time, but I'm going to go to Scott's question and kind of end it there, I guess, because it's there. But I believe the market's very confused as to what real IoT is and how it can be applied. The question is, who is the best to educate and clarify? I think that's a great question, and I think there is a lot, and typically it's been being done by the solution providers, right? And Stephan or anyone else having a great comment there, I'd love to end it on that.
I mean, for sure, we've invested quite a lot in collateral and building education out there. I'm a big believer in getting information from multiple sources. So I would also encourage you to reach out to work with any industry associations and programs that you might be part of, because more likely than not, you will be in a consortium with companies who have gone down this route and have their learnings of their own to build from as well.
My perspective, I'm a value expert in the IoT space. There's so much, I'm going to use a bad word, BS out there. You got to talk to people who have done it, people who have gone through the process in a very concrete manner and have delivered value. And then ask them, how did you do it, right? And cut through all these smoke and mirror of great marketing and these trillions of dollars in the report. At the end of the day, it's about $1 after $1 and getting the job done. So find these thought leaders, contact me. I can show you my battle scars, and but it's done very successfully by many companies outside of all these fancy noise that's being created.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. Thanks to our panelists. Thanks for all of our attendees. We ran over by a couple minutes, but that's to be expected. It was a great discussion.
Exciting.
Hope everyone found some value of this. Feel free to reach out to any of us for more discussions on this. We love, as you can see, we love talking about this stuff. And we know we're not perfect, and we know that together, though, we can bring some great minds together to find some solutions to problems. And we'd love to help answer questions or help you find where you can get value out of predictive maintenance. So with that, thank you everyone so much. Everyone have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we hope to talk to you all soon.
Bye-bye.